What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you guys with a big episode of the pod on a Friday, July 19th, 2024. And joining me is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins, live here on the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Justin, let's get right into it, man. It has been an eventful day and an eventful week, but maybe not in the best way, you could say, if you're a fan of Oregon football recruiting. So first of all, how are you? And then just let's get into the big news of the day.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. I did actually just go outside and the sky is indeed not falling. So I know that some folks see it that way. And yeah, obviously Oregon took an L earlier this week, not getting DJ Pickett's commitment and him going to LSU. But last I checked, they still have I think the number 4 ranked class in the country and a host of 5 stars still on the table. So all is not lost so far.
It's not lost so far. So the big news of the day, of course, is 5-star safety Trey McNutt, who is scheduled to come off the board in just a few hours, about 3 hours from whenever you're watching this. He has decided to reschedule his commitment for, I believe it's August 3rd now. And, especially because the Ducks missed out on DJ Pickett earlier this week, a lot of fans kind of were quick to get into a frenzy after seeing that development, but it doesn't seem like it's necessarily bad news for Oregon. I know you got an update over on ScoopDuck and Steve Wiltfong got one as well. I tried to make a couple calls to some Oregon sources, but none were successful in going through, unfortunately. So I just want to give you the floor to kind of try to put the folks at ease.
Yeah, it's just it's just something you can't control. Obviously, there's outages, IT outages all over the country that impacted the airlines, the airports, massive canceled flights all over the country. And everybody needs to take a step back and remember one thing, okay? One thing. This is a really big thing for Trey McNutt. This is probably the biggest thing in his life, right? Being able to make your college commitment, being able to make it in front of a huge audience. This is a big deal. And a lot of times these young men want family there. They want aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. They want those folks there. And so he had people expected to fly in, and those those flights were canceled and or delayed and weren't able to make the commitment. So they pushed it back a couple weeks, and that's that. So, I mean, from Oregon side, there was no panic, and there was, great communication about all this, and then they totally understood. So I'm not about to hop in there and change my prediction anytime soon. I don't believe that you are either. And so, again, it's just one of those freak things that you simply can't control. And if people take a step back and realize, hey, this is a really big thing for this young man, let him make it how he wants to and with the people he wants around him. And that's what he's doing.
And I think that makes even more sense, Justin, when you peel back the layers a little bit and just look at what Trey has done in his community. One of the big stories with him was earlier this spring when he was playing 7-on-7 ball. I believe it was with Fast Houston. There was some kind of a rule within Ohio athletics that wouldn't let you play 7-on-7 ball. And I think if he isn't currently, he was facing, some kind of, I don't want to say it was a suspension, but he was going to have to miss some games or something with eligibility. I really wish I did a little bit more research on that because it sounds kind of serious, but I don't think anything bad is supposed to happen right now. He was really kind of making a stand just to talk about the benefits of playing 7-on-7 high school ball and how much it's helped him grow as a person, get his name out there, get exposure, and how that helps everybody. And it was just a really weird rule. So he's really putting the kids first, putting his community first. And I think having his family there, like you said, like you would expect with anybody, that would be pretty big. But I think that, when you know that kind of a backstory, I think it supports some of what we're hearing now.
Yeah, there's just nothing you could do. I mean, it's not like he woke up this morning and was like, forget it. I want to go take, like if he ends up on Texas A&M or Ohio State's campus or something next weekend, okay, y'all want to get a little bit more concerned, I'm with you, then my concern level changes. If he ends up in Eugene next weekend for Saturday Night Live, okay, are we going to still be freaking out? And I'm not saying he's taking a trip next weekend. Clearly it's available, now. He might end up taking a trip. He might not. Either way, like I said, right now, I'm not pushing the panic button because you hop on Twitter or whatever, and you can see that this is a very real thing that's impacted, tons of people all over. I know there's, people that have posted about being an IT guy and either wishing they had the day off or something to that effect. And I'm not an IT guy, so I'm glad I'm not involved in it because it sounds messy. So yeah, I mean, again, how about this? There's no internal panic at Oregon currently. They totally understand the situation. Everything was communicated well, and it just is what it is.
Especially given the IT issues, I'm glad we're even able to have this stream. I didn't really think about that too much, if it was even going to interfere with what we had going on. And then I started hearing about the outages late last night, and I was getting a little bit nervous because I'm supposed to fly tomorrow afternoon, but it doesn't look like Alaska Airlines has been compromised. Maybe that's too aggressive of a word, but we'll see. It's never easy when you have to travel. There's always got to be some wrinkle thrown in there. But yeah, to your point, Justin, I think a lot of people were pretty concerned when they first saw this news. Before I had heard that it was linked to the outage, I was kind of thinking, oh boy, here comes Texas A&M, definitely trying to make things interesting. Or of course, how can you not talk a little bit about Ohio State, given that McNutt is an Ohio State legacy? But as of right now, that's not what the intel or reporting is pointing to. It simply looks like a logistical issue. But all that said, Justin, kind of to your previous point, 2 weeks isn't nothing in recruiting. So if he does want to set up any more trips, I think that certainly gives him the flexibility to do so. I believe that the current dead period ends on July 25th. So that's when we can expect some of these recruits from all across the country to be making these trips and getting on the move again.
And I'll say two things. First of all, I'm going to say this: had Oregon maybe not missed on DJ Pickett a couple days ago, I doubt anybody would be even raising eyebrows right now. Like after kind of relaying the information, why I don't think anybody would be in panic mode. The only reason some are in panic mode is because of what happened with DJ Pickett earlier this week, and I think some folks are just kind of neurotic to a degree on their own. Secondly, why 2 weeks, right? Why? Well, first of all, as most of you know, if you book a flight, obviously they're cheaper the farther out you get. And not to mention, like, let's take this to a personal level. I don't know how many people this impacted in his group. I don't know how many family members. It might have been 2, it might have been 10. I don't know. But these are people with jobs and people, with houses and have to get their pets set up to be taken care of. So, why not just do it tomorrow then? Why not do it Monday? Like, hey, dude, there's a lot of logistics here. It's not just, him making an announcement and having, his parents and his siblings behind him. He's clearly got family planning to be there, whether it's 2 people or 20 people. It doesn't matter. It's his day and it's his deal. And I'm sure that him and his family worked on a date that worked for whoever was coming in. Again, we don't need to get too personal. That's his business. But I mean, people need to take a step back and just start thinking about this rationally. Like, okay, why 2 weeks? Why August 3rd? Why, like, hey, here's why. Like, think about yourself. I know, like, tomorrow I'm trying to go up to the lake tomorrow, and I've got to figure out somebody to watch my 2 dogs tomorrow night. And that's just driving up to the lake so I can be. So, I mean, people have cats, people have dogs, people have birds, people have whatever. And yeah, so this makes sense. Just give it some time. If we hear about him and, ending up on somebody else's campus between now and then, okay, your concerns are now justified in my opinion. And I would also have concerns at that point, but for now, it's all good.
Yeah, we're not at that point right now. So no cause to be too crazy as it pertains to Trey McNutt's recruitment and him rescheduling his decision date, his commitment date. We got a lot of people here in the live chat. Shout out to Kevin Kelly saying the grass is damn green. And if you guys have any questions that you want to run by Justin or I, make sure to throw them in the live chat. You can also drop us a super chat if you want to jump your question into the top of the list, as these live streams can get pretty crowded. But Justin, any more thoughts on Trey McNutt? Or actually, we had a 2025 question that we could maybe get into if that sounds good to you. This one from Orville Perkins. Any developments on Michael Terry? Seemed like we were out on him post DM committing to Corey Moore, but with Mosey Perry potentially decommitting, I could see talks ramping up again. And that's the end of the question.
Okay, that's a good question. I appreciate the question. So if you're listening or you're tuned in, I don't know how many people we got, but hopefully there's a few. Send some questions because Max and I want to get to them. That particular question from Orville Perkins, I'll read it here. Any developments on a Michael Terry? Seemed like we were out on him post DeCorey and Moore committing. So no real development there. I think Texas continues to make a push. I believe Oregon will still take him. Oregon is pushing for him. Oregon would love to have him. Oregon would love to land him. So that hasn't changed. But I do think it's going to be tough for Oregon to get both Michael Terry and DeCorey and Moore. Not impossible. I'm not saying they're out, but I think I would give the edge to Texas right now. Michael Terry's, talking about taking visits, potentially, visiting Oregon again, hasn't set any commitment date. So he remains a target for Oregon. It remains a chance that he could end up at Oregon. I do think right now Oregon probably trails Texas, and I think that's a byproduct of the DeCorey and Moore commitment. To your second point with Mosey Perry potentially decommitting, I don't think either one of them is decommitting. So I know that was kind of a thing and was talked about on Twitter, and there's a decommitment coming and some of that stuff. I've checked, and as far as I know, Isaiah Mosey still locked in, and as far as I know, Cooper Perry still loves the Ducks very much, and the Ducks value him as a really good player. So I don't think that's a thing at all. I think Michael Terry is just kind of his own thing, regardless of that.
Okay. Yeah, I know for as far as my end, I've been able to check in a little bit when there were some of those rumors going around or the chatter about Perry, and he's locked in. I haven't been able to get anything on Mosey myself in particular, but I will add here that I think one of the things that added to a little bit of that skepticism was the fact that his dad just got hired on the Nebraska staff, and he has taken some visits, I believe an official visit as well, out to Lincoln. So I think that was kind of something that just perked people's attention, grabbed their attention and whatnot. But it looks like Michael Terry is going to be taking a visit out to Texas for their big barbecue event, the first thing kind of coming out of the dead period. And then I remember that Steve Wiltfong had reported, as well as our Justin Wells over at Inside Texas, had reported that Michael Terry was going to be taking a trip back out to Oregon, which is something that I think is pretty notable because he's pretty much limited or narrowed his recruitment to those two schools. I think I'm with you right now as far as Texas holding the edge there, but it does look like he's going to be getting back to Oregon for Saturday Night Live, because I'm looking at Wiltfong's story right now and it says he'll head to Texas on July 25th and then he'll head to Oregon that weekend. So definitely doesn't feel like it's over for Oregon and Michael Terry, and you're going to want to stay in the mix for a guy like that as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, and again, to your point, you can take multiple trips next week, and they're just going to have to be pretty close and back to back. Probably not really able to take three, but there are several recruits that not related to Oregon taking a couple of trips. And it's kind of, like I said, a lot of these guys more than likely, and in Terry's case, have taken their official visits in June. And this is kind of a, hey, let me just double check with the, my top two schools or whatever, the two I'm most interested in, or something to that degree. And to your point, I think Michael Terry really feels like he's focused on Oregon and Texas. And I think those are the two schools. Again, I think Isaiah Mosey is still locked in with Oregon, regardless of his dad being hired by Nebraska. And I don't think Oregon's looking to cut ties with Cooper Perry anytime soon. So it looks like they just want to keep adding, not subtracting.
There you go. Okay. Great question. This isn't a question, but just a cool comment from our guy, Micah Time. Said, started my dynasty with the Ducks, bringing that first natty baby, LOL. I have not gotten the game yet, Justin. I don't know if you have. I think you maybe said your son has, and you were watching him play, but I've been seeing a lot of clips of the gameplay, and like this game's just got people, it's taken the country by storm, and people are fired up for it.
Yeah, my 19-year-old son, he generally works at noon or 1, every day, and he's been waking up at like 9, and I sit on the couch and he's playing it in front of me, and I'll just kind of glance up as I'm working. So he's totally cut into my TV watching time. But yeah, he's been playing. I've been watching for the last week or so. He's been playing it all week, and he did lose today to Michigan. I think they were number 3 and he was number 1. So I think he's 9-2 on his dynasty season. I don't know, something like that. But I will say this: I've been watching it, and I think I tweeted it. Evan Stewart is absolutely unguardable in the game. Dylan Gabriel, his short game is really effective. Oregon's defensive line is really good, especially Mateo. And then Jeff Bassa and Jabbar Muhammad. Like Jabbar Muhammad intercepts everything thrown his way, and Bassa gets 15 tackles. Like I'm watching, and I see the guys they have ranked on there. That said, watching today, Michigan's defensive line was a huge problem for him, and I think that's legit because that's a pretty legit defensive line. The game was in Michigan, by the way, so it made it a little bit harder on him.
Well, I'm excited for that game. I'm hopefully going to get it after I get back from my camping trip. So that'll be a perfect addition once the football season gets underway here pretty much in August. Let's kind of use this question from our guy Kevin again to get us into our next portion of the show. Kevin asks, any news on O-line recruiting? This has been a topic that we've been following for a while, Justin, as the Ducks have a trio of commitments in the fold. And as far as the offensive line goes, they have Zaire Addison out of the state of Florida. They have Dimitri Manning out of Bellevue, Washington. And then their newest commit, who we actually haven't gotten to talk about on the podcast just yet, from Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman, Alai Kalaniuvalu. I hope I said that right. He committed last week while I was in Hawaii. So I didn't get to cover it quite as much as I wanted to, but that was a really big addition. It seems like that's going to be their center in this class, I want to say. But just wanted to kind of get some of your thoughts there, and we can dive into O-line recruiting.
I'm not going to answer this question because Kevro was supposed to be at my wedding and he bailed last minute. So sorry, Kevin. I'm not answering no, I'm kidding. It's always a good question. Offensive line recruiting has been interesting this cycle. And it seems like Alik Terry's just kind of chipped away at it piece by piece. You've got Juan Gaston on the board, and he's set to commit here in a couple of weeks. I believe August 2nd is the date. Looking like a Georgia-Oregon battle, maybe Tennessee in there too. That would be a big one. I know Oregon is in it more than folks think, but I still have a tough time thinking a kid from the state of Georgia leaves the state of Georgia, over a legitimate Georgia Bulldog offer. So we'll see. We'll see if Oregon can chip away at that one. And then, of course, there's 5-star, offensive tackle Michael Fasusi out of the state of Texas. So far, Oregon has done a great job recruiting the state of Texas. So maybe we're not, right now you would think that one's Oregon versus Texas. And if that's the case, Dan Lanning's kind of been stuffing Steve Sarkisian in a locker here lately with some of these guys. So not to get too cocky and not to jinx it, but maybe we start looking at Fasusi in a little bit more of a serious manner. I know he didn't make his official visit to Oregon in June. I do think that there was some plan there with that for Oregon to hold it into the fall. So we'll see. I don't know. There hasn't been a lot of information on Fasusi lately. I mentioned Gaston and Fasusi. I just don't know that there's a ton left on the board there currently, at the prep level. So, Aaron Dunn's a guy that we've talked about before, and I felt like Oregon has not been the school to beat there for a while, and I don't believe that's changed. So whether it's Utah, USC, whatever the case might be, those are the big three that come to mind. So I think with what Oregon has committed, they'll continue working on those two guys. And then you're going to see them enter the transfer portal for offensive line. So honestly, it just almost doesn't matter how many they sign at the prep level. I think you'll see them, hit the transfer portal really hard at offensive line, at least for two guys probably. So just keep that in mind. I
think I find myself kind of along your line of thinking as it pertains to Juan Gaston, just a top Georgia guy isn't going to get away from Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs. We saw that with Isaiah Gibson, who was committed to USC, and then he flipped to Georgia. We're probably going to see that, I would guess, with Justice Terry, who was committed to USC, and then he decommitted, but has not made a new commitment just yet. So we'll see what happens there. But at the same time, I don't know, Justin, I'm not expecting it, but I feel like Alik Terry is kind of building a reputation as a recruiter, as someone who's good for a surprise or two every cycle. And Zaire Addison was a huge addition, but I wasn't crazy. I'll put it this way. I was surprised when he committed, but it wasn't like completely out of left field, because that dude loved Oregon. But at the same time, he was taking tons of visits, so it was a little bit hard to kind of get a read on things. But I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to count Oregon out yet, and we have a little bit more time. But at the same time, I also don't expect him to land in Eugene when all is said and done. Fasusi is an interesting one, though, because I talked to him in Nashville, and he seemed like he was really liking what Alik Terry and the Ducks were pitching to him, but of course didn't make that OV. Like you said, maybe there was some strategy behind that. I kind of find myself in the boat of, if he makes it to Eugene for a trip, I would think that it would be, I thought it was going to be in the fall, and he would probably be coming back as a Texas commit. But now that he is going to be announcing his commitment on August 23rd, that gives you a whole month to try to make something happen. And I think he's got Oklahoma as well as Mizzou and Texas A&M in the running there. That's actually his top 5. And it's August 21st. I think I might have said 23rd. August 21st, Michael Fasusi will make his college commitment. But I know that Texas has done a really good job in that recruitment. And it's going to be a fun one to watch play out, especially with all the momentum they have, more so on the field. I know the summer hasn't been the best for them from a recruiting standpoint. Of course, you mentioned Decorium Moore, but I don't think that Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns are going to stay down for long.
And I mean, I think he's earned this benefit. I'm sure Dan has a plan here, right? He knows how many offensive linemen he needs to get committed. So depending on what happens with Fasusi and Gaston, if there's still a hole or two left, they'll pivot. And, maybe there's a couple guys that we don't know about yet that they're, kind of evaluating or talking to, or, maybe they're kind of laying in the weeds on some guys that are committed elsewhere. They're trying to circle back on in October, November. I could totally see that, and I could totally understand why they don't want that out there. And, so I'm kind of braced for that potentially coming, and we'll just kind of have to see how it unfolds. I mean, so far he really hasn't left Oregon in a bad spot at any position, when he needs to. But again, the body of work at offensive line recruiting is going to need to be measured at the prep level and the transfer portal level, because they're going to need both pieces this year, to be ready for next year.
Any successful team, I think, will find that perfect balance between the two, with a priority being placed on the high school ranks. Shout out to our guy, the Duck Knight, with the hit the like comment. Guys, hit the like button, like the stream, and help us continue to grow this thing. We got 918 people, 921 in the stream right now. So help us get this thing up to 1,000, because we're bringing you guys all the Oregon recruiting coverage that you love. And there's no better time to come see us at ScoopDuck.com. Try us out for just $1. The season's getting underway. Recruiting's going to ramp up. I think once we get out of the dead period here, we got a lot of decisions, a lot of coveted prospects that are set to come off the board before too long. So definitely try us out. $1 gets you 3 months over at ScoopDuck.com. And let's go into another one here. Interesting question from Wink. Wink says, fellas, do you think Oregon will be used as a financial pawn to boost kids' chances of landing at the spots they want and receiving more money? Do you want to start with this one, Justin?
Sure. Real quick, I think Oregon's a financial pawn regardless. I think there is a massive misconception, not even just like in the social atmosphere, just by fans and folks that follow recruiting. I think coaches are completely blind to what Oregon's truly offering some of these guys. And that's not Oregon's fault. That's something that the NIL agents are doing. They love to throw out that Oregon's a contender for player X, even if they are or aren't, and that Oregon's offering a ridiculous amount of NIL money or whatever to try and get, the offers up from other schools. So Uh, I'm not sure that there's another school that's used more than Oregon for financial gain in these NIL negotiations. So, and what that means and what I want to say there is it takes a lot of patience and just being, really smart about how Oregon attacks NIL, right? Like they can't just sit there. There's no reason for them to outbid themselves, right? Don't make your offer and then, realize that you're just simply outbidding yourself, because that's, I think, something that NIL agents try and do. So is Oregon competitive? Absolutely. I mean, they wouldn't be getting these guys if they weren't, but I think there's a massive misconception by a lot of big programs and their coaches that say, Oregon's just offering stupid money for guys. Like, they're not offering $5 million when everybody else is offering $1 million. That's just careless. That's senseless. And it's absolutely inaccurate.
The thing that I would contribute on this is that it's interesting to look at it through the lens of a committed player taking a visit to a school they aren't committed to. I feel like that seems like it's like I'm really trying to leverage my situation. It's like, hey, I don't think I got a big enough number from you the first time, so let me make it look like I'm maybe more interested in some of these other schools, even if I'm not, just to kind of sweeten the deal, which I think that might be where some of this question is coming from. But I just thought that was an interesting conversation piece, given the climate we're in now with NIL and just how much it's complicated recruiting.
It's lazy and it's easy, right? Because everybody immediately wants to say, "Oh, Phil Knight's just," Phil Knight is a mega booster. He's got obviously much deeper pockets than we do. And yeah, if Phil Knight wanted to just go out there and drop $5 million on the top 25 prospects and sign them all in every class, he could, and he wouldn't even notice the deduction in his bank account, right? And but he's not doing that. He's not doing that, and it's a completely easy pawn for NIL agents, which are the new agents in college football. Like, it's, you talk about the guys that are getting the big NFL contracts, and what those agents do. They're literally out there just trying to get their guy the most money they can get. That's what these guys are doing too. And Phil Knight is just an easy target that everybody loves to say, well, Phil's offering huge bags of cash. If you want my player, you better up the offer. And so that's what's going on.
Okay. And then let's keep it rolling here. I got one more question, and then we can dive into some more recruiting talk, Justin, if that sounds good to you. A big shout out to you guys. You guys are showing up in big numbers, in droves here in the chat. We're borderline at 1,000. I'm kind of trying to just stall a little bit here. 1,003. There you go. So big thank you guys for showing up. I hadn't really heard too much about this one, Justin, but let's put it out there for some discussion. Question from Top Shot. Any news on the Stein to Clemson rumors if Dabo is out after this year? I haven't heard about this, but it definitely seems like Dabo is one of those coaches who has a warmer seat than most. And I think a big part of that obviously is his refusal to use the transfer portal. And I haven't heard anything about Will Stein to Clemson, but there's no denying that if he has another strong year with the Ducks, he's going to be one of the hottest names in the sport. I just think if he were to hypothetically leave, it would have to be a really good situation at a school that I think he maybe has a bit more ties to. So I'm not trying to put speculation out there that he's leaving, because I don't think he is. But all we're saying is that I think it's going to take a spot like Louisville potentially, right, where he actually has ties to, where he played at, to potentially make that one happen. But I think Dan Lanning knows full well how incredibly valuable Will Stein is to his staff and the success that he's having at Oregon.
Well, I will say this, and it's double-sided here. That would be an absolutely massive leap for Will Stein. And I mean, to go from being, you were at UTSA and then you were Oregon's OC for 2 years and you're taking the Clemson job. Clemson job is a top 10, top 15 job at worst nationally. That's a big, big job. Now I say that, and I'm sitting here, and Oregon basically went out and plucked Dan Lanning at a very young age as just a DC and a very young DC and moved him to Oregon, which is also a top 15 job. I feel like those are two different situations, and that's not a slight on Coach Stein. I think Oregon will have a great year offensively, and I think that there would be some schools to potentially look at him as a head coach, and I can see why. He's very well organized. He's very well spoken. He's very highly regarded. So I could see him getting those opportunities. But you think about it as an Oregon fan, because you're like, well, Kenny Dillingham was here 2 years and got the ASU job. ASU is not a top 15 job. Okay. Like, that's great for Coach Dillingham. And I really like ASU. I think they could be a sleeping giant if they could organize NIL and win some games, because you've got a really nice recruiting footprint in the Phoenix and the Arizona area. And you can also, you're just a few hours away from LA. So you can get the LA kids or the Inland Empire kids over easily, and they can, get parents back and forth. You got a really nice recruiting area there if you're ASU. And it's a lot of fun, and they have a lot of hot women on campus. That's an easy sell if you're Kenny Dillingham. But ASU is not a top 15 job. It's probably not even a top 30 job. So you think about that jump, and you're basically doubling it for Will Stein. So I haven't read this, and I haven't seen this. So this is just as I'm reading it now from this question, which is a great question. I'm glad we're talking about it. It seems a bit out of line. Now, if TCU became available, or Baylor, or something that puts him back down in, I think he's got better ties in the state of Texas right now than anywhere. And I'm talking about Will Stein. That would make a ton of sense. You put Will Stein back in the state of Texas at one of these schools, and I think he's going to be set up for success in recruiting because of the ties he has down there. Those options could come up, maybe. I don't know, but it seems a little bit premature for that at this juncture.
I agree with you as far as it just being a pretty big leap for someone to have their first head coaching job. But you never know. He's a stud of a coach, and we'll have to see how this season plays out. Before we get into our next portion of the show, want to give a big thank you and a big shout out to my guy Ruben over at Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what you guys have planned for dinner tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. You got to try their homemade tortillas, some margaritas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Justin, we talked a lot about 2025, and understandably so, but like we were talking about in yesterday's episode, 2026 is becoming more and more important and more prevalent as we kind of work our way through the calendar. And Oregon's going to have a lot of top 2026s on campus very soon with their annual Saturday Night Live camp coming up. And I want to talk about one of their premier targets along the defensive line, and really one of their top targets, I think, just defensively. And that's modern day defensive lineman Tomohini Tapui. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I can go full screen with the highlights, or if this is the best way that I can do it. Sorry, I still don't have my monitor set up, folks, or else this would look a lot cleaner. But I think I actually can. And then we'll just, I don't know if that's looking full screen for you, Justin. I think it probably should. Are you seeing it full screen?
Yeah, we're little boxes on the left, and I can see all the plays coming up.
Okay, I can't see you guys at all, but I'll just we can roll with it. This is kind of just a unique way to do it. I just want to have the best viewing experience possible for everybody, but just to get into a little bit of it here. So Tapui is going to be in Eugene for Saturday Night Live. He's probably going to be, I think, squarely in the mix for one of the best defensive linemen on the West Coast in the 2026 class. He's coming in at 6'3", 320. He's been to Oregon a number of times. This is a guy that got offered, I want to say, his freshman year, and he just finished his sophomore season with the Monarchs. You also have some schools like Oklahoma, USC, Texas, and Miami, I believe, were the other ones that he mentioned. But the Ducks have done a good job here establishing a good early relationship. And I think when you're dealing with the likes of a modern day, you really have to make sure that you get in there early, because everybody in the country is going to come after these guys if they're the real deal.
Yeah, I think there's a lesson to be learned here, watching Dan Lanning recruit. And if you look, he's done a really good job of identifying 3, 4, 5, 6 guys early in every cycle that Oregon pays a premium on, puts an emphasis on. And he might not have been the first one, but Tupoi was one of the very early 2026 that you saw Oregon get on campus and start recruiting heavily. And I don't know the number, but it feels like he's been on campus probably 3 or 4 times already, at Oregon, which tells you that they've put a very big emphasis on him. I know I've talked about this a bit here and there. The 2025 defensive line class out west is very weak. It's not very good at all. It's never especially great in any given cycle, but it looks to be fairly strong, fairly good in 2026. And as you can see this, and I know we'll talk about it, but there's a couple guys that Oregon's got, put a very heavy emphasis on, and Tupoi is one of them. Reminds me of Nasir Wyatt in the fact that Nasir Wyatt was one of those guys that you saw Oregon recruiting very heavily, very early on, got him on campus multiple times. You saw the results there. So I think this is a guy, if we're talking about maybe like the top 10 early 26s to watch, this is certainly one of them, and he's probably top 5 at worst.
Absolutely. And he's been a really fun guy to watch out here in Southern California. I'm kind of modifying my approach for modern day coverage this year. They have so many good players, but almost all of their games are just blowouts. So I'm going to try to get to some more quality games, but still get you plenty of modern day coverage by going to practices, camps, whatever it might be, out my way and in Santa Ana. So this is a huge target to watch. I think it's great that Oregon's getting him on campus. And of course, you want to keep that modern day pipeline flowing if you are Dan Lanning and the Ducks. But he's a big guy you got to keep an eye on. The full interview is over on ScoopDuck. You can give it a read today and try us out, like I said, for just $1. But we're rolling through here, Justin. We got a lot of people.
Real quick, Max. I'll throw one at you. You just talked to him. Where do you feel Oregon fits on his board right now, early on?
Sure. I mean, I think they're definitely one of those schools that's standing out at this point. He didn't get super concrete in some of the stuff we were talking about, but he cited a strong relationship with Tony Tuioti and just how good he feels about his connections with the Oregon staff at this point. So I think especially when you see a lot of modern day guys going to Oregon, I think that kind of naturally makes you feel more comfortable if you have guys from your school that are ending up in Eugene. And then you also have the whatever it's worth, his mom's coming with him on the trip. And when I asked him what he's looking for in a school, he talked about, somewhere that his mom feels comfortable sending him, which I think you always kind of hear that, but maybe to varying degrees. So you got Tuioti, Tosh Lapoy, Coach Drew House, and Dan Lanning. So I would not be surprised. I don't really feel like saying that Oregon leads just because I don't have as good of a feel as I would maybe want to say that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did lead here, especially with what they've been able to do with top defensive line talent, and they just got Aiden Breland last cycle.
Perfect.
So that's kind of what I had on that front. But do you want to maybe get to a couple more questions before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, if there's questions, let them rip.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got some more here. I got some starred, but I'm working through it here. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, this one from Micah Time again. Any recruits the Ducks are after that you think might be taking it into February besides Pickett? Of course, talking there about 5-star LSU cornerback commit now, DJ Pickett. That's someone that I expect Oregon to continue to recruit. If you're looking at maybe some of their possible flip candidates, I think he has to be one that you include for sure. I think Noah McHale would be another one, the Texas A&M linebacker commit. But as of right now, I don't really know of any guys that are planning to take it that far, especially when you consider that a lot of these guys want to be enrolled early and maybe even with their team of choice by the time they're practicing for bowl games in late December, early January.
Yeah, usually 9 out of 10 times the guys taking it into February now are, those late bloomers, right? So the guy that all of a sudden pops on the radar in October or whatever because he's having a killer senior season. Those are generally some of the guys that will take it into February. most of your 5 stars will not, unless there's a coaching change. So I guess if I'm answering that question, you got to start looking at the school, right? In the situation, you got to start looking like, okay, if Lincoln Riley has another mid-season, what's USC do? Florida, obviously the seat's really hot down there in Florida for Billy Napier. So those are the schools, if Mario struggles in Miami this year so those, you got to start looking at those commit lists of those schools and thinking, okay, any of these schools with a potential, hot seat candidate, could these guys maybe, make have to take it into February because the head coach got fired at the end of November or December or whatever the case might be, and they basically have to revisit everything. So that's how I answer that question. Obviously with Pickett going to LSU, I don't know that he'll go into February. And I also don't think Brian Kelly's seat is all that hot given what they paid him. So that doesn't seem like a likely candidate to me, although I'm certain Oregon will try to get him on campus this fall for sure.
Yeah, you would expect them to try to get some of these guys on campus, especially the flip targets. I know you were thinking about maybe putting a story out there, so I don't want to let the cat too out of the bag as that question goes. Have another one here from Wink, which I think is interesting. Are there any flags being raised about the top Cali kids leaving East? I know USC catches heat for not recruiting Cali, but Oregon also losing out on Cali kids when they should fill USC's void. This is certainly an interesting question and one that has definitely been on my radar here as someone who lives in California and covers a lot of the top California kids. I don't know if I'd say it's a flag being raised, but it's interesting to see that Oregon has missed out on some of these top SoCal kids, and most of the talent is in Southern California as far as what Oregon's going after. But that's not a slight to Northern California, where I'm originally from. But it's just a night and day difference between Northern and Southern California. But the Ducks do stay involved and try to get one of the top guys out of NorCal every year. Jurion Dickey, Jericho Johnson, Josiah Sharma this year, just some that come to mind. But I think really it's we're going to have to maybe revisit this question once signing day comes and goes, because that's when you'll really be able to evaluate how you did in California. But as of right now, I think the biggest development is really that A&M has put a huge emphasis. A&M and Alabama have put a really big emphasis on the state of California with guys like Dijon Lee going to Alabama, Hassan Longstreet, Adonis Curry going to A&M, and obviously Noah McHale. So I don't know if I'd say, obviously you're not having the success rate that you would like if you were Oregon. I don't think they're doing a poor job, but we're seeing another big contender kind of entering the ring here in A&M.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see A&M have the level of success they are recruiting the state of California. And I mean, credit to Mike Elko. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, there's a lot of talent out there. Alabama makes sense, obviously, because Kalen DeBoer has been at Washington, now has a much bigger podium at Alabama to basically, obviously, if you look at the guys that Alabama has committed from the state of California, I don't think a single one of them would commit to Kalen DeBoer at Washington. And so I think, I know Kalen DeBoer is getting a ton of credit for recruiting, and he's doing a good job, but it's Alabama that's recruiting. It's not Kalen DeBoer. Like that's a program that sells itself. So just to me, from kind of following this, and yes, Oregon has got to make sure that the guys in the state of California they're getting, because to me, I now consider Southern California and California basically Oregon's home state. Like the way they've recruited it, Lincoln Riley has not even challenged Oregon other than quarterbacks, which understandably he's going to get. So the two right now that stick out to me that I would say, like, these were guys Oregon really wanted that got away. I would say that's Noah McHale, like at the top of the list, first and foremost. I think Houston, well, I guess maybe there's three, but I think Houston Longstreet's probably in there as well, pretty high up on the board. I think those are two guys. If we had Dan Lanning on the show and he was speaking candidly, he'd say he'd like those two guys. I think there's only one guy on Alabama's commit list, and I think it's Jackson Lloyd that they would like to have. I never got the sense that it was like Oregon made this massive push for him. I just felt like he's, obviously he's a 5-star offensive tackle, high 4-star, whatever he's ranked. I think Oregon would like to have him, but I never got the sense that they pushed super hard for him. So that's just kind of how I see it. I think Dijon Lee and some of these others, I never really saw Oregon push that hard for him. So hard to call them misses. I guess technically they are, but and again, we'll have to revisit how many of these guys will end up misses when December rolls around. I mean, Oregon is not going to give up on Noah McHale. I know that. So, and probably not on Houston Longstreet either.
Yeah. So I don't really think you can consider it a miss if Oregon's not making a big push, but that's just the way that things go. Sometimes it doesn't always fall your way. Well, my laptop is about to die, so this might be a good time to wrap up, Justin. But just wanted to again say thank you to everybody for coming by and showing us some support. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and share the show. You can find more of Justin on Twitter at jhopkinssd, and you can find more of me anywhere at mtorresports. Come see us at scoopduck.com. And thank you again so much for taking some time out of your day. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.